Hi everybody, and welcome back to another episode from the Spooncraft server. Today we're going to be connecting ourselves up to the Nether hub. That's going to be our big project for this episode. There's a lot of things I need to do, and since we're going to be working on Nether portals, and I found it was kind of a problem in the past when I was editing my videos, I decided to add on a resource pack called Silent Portals that mutes all portal noises in the game. So if you're wondering why you don't hear the portal noises when we're in the game, that's why. As you can see, there is no audio right now, and there normally would be when you're this close to a portal. That's because of the resource pack. So that's what's up with that. If you want to know what resource pack that is, I will leave a link down in the description. And also, I don't know what happened to the snails, but they seem to have taken off, so you know what? I think they're bad news to begin with, so I'm kind of all right with that. But yeah, today we're working on another portal, and you can see I've already got one set up here. Now this one I want taking us down to the lower part of the Nether. If we go in this main portal here, this will take us to the Nether roof. Alright, so I did connect a path from the Nether hub all the way out to where I want this portal to connect to. It's about 400 blocks out. It was a bit of a stretch to put this in. Alright, there we are. So there's the portal that I got built in the Nether. And as you see, when we go through this side, it will take us right where I want it to take us. Boom, there we are. There's our base. We're in the right portal. This is exactly where I want us to come to when I go through that portal. However, there is a problem when we go through this portal. And that said, it takes us up onto the Nether roof. So we're going to need to fix that. Now, when it comes to setting up another portal, most people know that to get the right coordinates, you just need to divide your overworld coordinates by 8. And that will get what you need to have in the Nether. So, as you can see here, our coordinates are about negative 3624 by negative 6480. And then once we're in the Nether, our coordinates are negative 453 and negative 810, or about there. So those are perfect. Now at this point, you're probably thinking, Doll, well, you just have to make sure your other coordinates match up too. And you know what? I was thinking the same thing. Ooh, that was a little spicy. I was thinking the same thing, but you know what? I checked my math. We're pretty good. But if you look at the coordinates here, you can see we're negative 444 and negative 803. And right here, we're at negative 3352 and negative 6424. Now, I've done the math a couple times, and I am pretty sure that that math adds up. So the thing that isn't working out for us has got to be the y-coordinate. So it's time to do a little bit more math. Okay, so there are 3 things that we need to look at for this. The first is the y-axis of the portal in the overworld. Now, I'm going to put that here. So overworld is at 113. Now the top of the Nether, that is 128. And now the level for the Nether hub is at 72. So we want to look at the difference between these two levels. Obviously, you can see we're closer to the portal on top of the Nether hub by only 15 blocks, where we are about 41 blocks higher than the portal in the Nether hub. So that's where we're having our issue, is we are 15 blocks away from here and 41 blocks away from there. So if we do some quick math, 41 minus 15 is 26. So we got to make up a difference of 26 blocks. So if we raise either one of those portals by 26 blocks, it should fix this problem. So we can raise the one in the lower part of the nether by 26, which at this point is 72. We raise that up 26. That will be at Y level 98. We could also raise the portal on top of the nether roof. If we add 26 blocks to 128, then we are looking at 154. So we could raise that up to Y level 154. Or we could raise both portals. As long as the combined value of both portals we raise is 26 total blocks, we could also raise that, and that should help. So like, let's say if we raise the one above the portal by 10 blocks to 138, then below the portal, we'll have to raise that the remaining 16, which would bring us to 88. So there's a few different ways we could do it. I think we're going to have to raise both portals. All right, so I think the next step is to figure out exactly how high we're going to raise our portal for the nether hub. I want the incline to be consistent, and that's pretty much the important thing. So we're going to see how many blocks we are out, and we'll come up with a good number to increase that height. Okay, so here we're at -6. And then the height of the ground here is 71. All right, it's time for a little bit more math. So we're going from -6 to -444. That is a total of 438 blocks. So we need to find a number that's divisible into 438 so we can keep our incline to our portal consistent. So I'm just going to do a little bit of math on the calculator here. We'll just see what numbers fit in there.
3 hours later.
So I think our best bet really is to go up one block about every 20 blocks. We can go up 21 blocks, which will take us from 72 to 93. We'll only have to raise the portal on top of the nether hub by 5 blocks. So that seems pretty good to me. Let's give it a go. Okay, so we want this to go up 5 blocks, right? All right, so we move that up 5 blocks. So yeah, we're gonna raise this one up 22 blocks. So from 71 plus 22 is 93. All right, let's see if this works. All right. Going back through. All right, we're right where I wanted to be. All right, let's make sure this portal over here works. Nice. All right, now that we got both of those portals connected and they're working, we need to make them both accessible from both sides of the nether. Nice. I might do something a little bit more fancy than that, but for now it'll work. Before it got to work on bridging to the nether hub, I thought it'd be a good idea to get a gold helmet. It would keep the piglins off me, and to be honest, it was kind of a bad idea for me to build a bridge without one in the first place. Okay, so I have an idea for this, but I haven't actually tested it out, so I don't know if it's going to work or not. I'm going to give it a go and just hope for the best. Okay, I do like that. So let's just go. And I think I need to do something. What, I need a marker every 20 blocks. If I didn't have an elytra, I would have been dead right there. Y'all are kind of in the way. It took me a little bit to get into the rhythm of placing the frog lights, but once I got the hang of it, things sure started moving smoothly. It took a couple of hours to put down all the blocks, and I was finally connected to the Nether hub. I finished laying out the main path, but I still have more work to do to make the path safe. I thought it'd be good to take a break and do something a little different, so I went back to the ancient city to see if I could find some more loot. Alright, so we've made it back from our adventure down in the ancient city, and we've got some new music discs to listen to. Here are all the custom discs we have from the server, so let's check a couple of these out. Alright, let's put this jukebox right here. And, you know, we've already listened to this one in a previous video, so I don't think we can listen to that, but yeah, let's check this one out.
Swimming along, singing a song, planting pickles all day long. Swimming along, singing a song, planting pickles all day long. Pickles, pickles on the seafloor. 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 Pickles on the seafloor. Pickles, planting pickles all day long. Pickles on the seafloor. Pickles, planting pickles all day long. Pickles, pickles on the seafloor. Pickles, pickles on the seafloor. Pickles, pickles on the seafloor. Pickles, pickles on the seafloor.
Alright, enough of that. I suppose now that we've had our fun, it's time to get back to the task at hand. Let's jump into a tiny time lapse.
Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Time lapse, time lapse, time lapse, time lapse. Tiny, tiny time lapse. That's it. Tiny, tiny time lapse. Beautiful. Tiny, tiny time lapse. Cool. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, tiny time lapse. Tiny, tiny time lapse. This is gonna take a while. Tiny time lapse. So now I have to do the incredibly dull task of working out where the items are going to go, you know? So, you know what that means? It's a tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. 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 Time lapse, time lapse, time lapse, time lapse. Tiny, tiny time lapse. Yes. Tiny, tiny time lapse. Tiny, tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 really good. Tiny, tiny time lapse. Right. Tiny, tiny time lapse. Oh, tiny, tiny time lapse. Wait, hang on, what? There's got to be a creative way in which we can work around this. It definitely isn't the fastest method in the world, but let's crack on with third person time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny 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 time lapse. Time lapse, time lapse, time lapse, time lapse. That's not good. Oh, that is not good. This is ridiculous. I don't even know what to say. I'm also a tiny, tiny, tiny bit embarrassed. I've done enough talking. That definitely sounded like something from a horror film. Let's move on.
Oh, that's nice. What? Oh, the time-lapse music? You probably knew it was coming. Anyway, I'm just tending to this little pond we have here. I wanted to give this area a little decoration. Our cloud is raining, but it gives people a way up to the Nether portal. There's a little chest here for people to grab a snowball if they want to ride a ghast. There we go. Come here, buddy. Hey there. I still have to finish up the pathway in the Nether, but I think that's going to have to wait for another time. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.